me personally, and a lot of people love going out and having a big dinner and having a big night and having a real sort of aspirational experience you cannot have at home, and just get out of your usual world for a few hours. And I think maybe that's actually more important than ever.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. A few episodes ago, Peter Gilmore explained that to suggest that fine dining is dead is to suggest that creativity is dead. If fine dining was perceived as a hard sell after the first lockdown, how will it fare after being forced into a second lockdown, like we're seeing in Melbourne? Will the pinnacle of our industry be more important than ever, or will it be shelved as we find a new way forward? Hugh Allen is the executive chef of Vue de Monde in Melbourne. Hugh, how are you going?
I'm good, how are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm good, thank you. You've had a pretty tough couple of months there with shutting down the restaurant and reopening it again and shutting it down. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I think, okay, like not I'm trying to remain optimistic, but it is obviously pretty devastating, and especially for all the team, and just reopening was a lot of work. When we shut down, it was sort of late summer, and now when we reopened, it's winter, so we had to have a brand new menu, and which we worked on and done soft openings and tastings and all those kind of things you do for, and then it was only there for a couple of weeks, and then it was locked down again. So, and then when we open, it's it might be spring, so it's just obviously been really, I guess, inconsistent and difficult for everyone, the staff, the kitchen, the front of house, the admin, for all restaurants. So it's definitely not ideal, that's for sure. But I guess people's health is always a priority, and it will always be.
Your restaurant overlooks the city. What's it looked like looking down on Melbourne over the last couple of months?
Definitely quieter. Definitely quieter. And when the outbreak started, it was like dead. Like the city was dead, and there's no one to be seen. But when restrictions started easing, people really wanted to get out and walk around the botanical gardens and go for runs around Albert Park and be active and do things. And then we saw a lot of places doing really well with takeaway and take home food, and we did it for a little bit as well, and it was pretty successful. But then when things started slowly opening up, that was kind of the more almost a more difficult period, because with the restrictions of 20 people, we couldn't. It wasn't enough for us to be open commercially, and then so we sort of waited out to the 50 mark, and then only got a week of that. So. But people were really starting to come out, and you could see that. You could see just along the Yarra, in all the parks. There's definitely more and more people coming out towards the end of the first lockdown, but I guess that was short-lived.
Can you take us through that period? You said that you were sort of open as a restaurant just for a week before the second lockdown, and I remember seeing Pat Nurse and Danny Valent and Matt Stone and Joe Barrett all sort of there as you did some sort of soft launches and the reopening. What was it like bringing your team back together to create the restaurant again?
Yeah, it was great. It was a weird, to be honest, it was a bit of a weird night. It was the first time having, human beings that weren't staff packaging food in the restaurant. It felt great, to be honest. It felt really good. Just even cleaning the dining room, all the artwork, wiping everything down, just like really sort of a sense of setting up and sort of being renewed and reborn, and it was exciting, and we're really looking forward to it. And there's some of our big industry friends, and we just wanted to have some friends in and test it out and sort of use them as guinea pigs, and it went pretty well. It was a great night, but it was actually that night we were meant to open for 50 guests. The next day we were meant to have 50 guests, and the announcement came through the next day that you can only have 20 guests. So that was the original thing. They pushed it back to 20 guests So they never let 50 guests come in, and then that was short-lived as well. That only lasted another week, and then it was total lockdown again. So basically, we put off having 20 guests at a time because it wasn't commercially viable, waited to the 50 mark, and then had reservations in for the next few months with the 50 mark, basically. And then just before we did the big sort of soft opening, and then had all our friends in, and then just before we could open, we got pushed back to the 20 mark. So we sort of, then we were like, well, we have to open. Like, we've done all this work, we've brought staff on, we've got produce in the fridge, like, thousands of dollars worth of stuff. And also we couldn't sit on our hands and feet and anymore and do nothing. So we're like, all right, we'll do 20 and 20. So we just did it. We started for those 2 weeks we're open, just doing 2 seatings of 20 and a slightly reduced menu and cheaper menu. Which is not the usual thing we do, but we just obviously have to be flexible. So, but yeah, that was only, I guess, 2 weeks we're open.
What's been the impact with the second lockdown with staff and produce, and the potential future of the restaurant as well?
It is like basically right now it's just in hibernation. Like, all the staff are just hibernating basically, and we're not really doing anything. We had a decent amount of produce in the fridge, which we sort of went in and either fermented or froze or gave to one of the other restaurants around. But yeah, it's not good. Like, it's definitely not good. It's the main one being staff. Like, there's been some, JobKeeper's been really good for businesses, but there are a few key people that have really missed out. And unfortunately for us, it's a huge amount of our team. Like, in a team of 40, in the kitchen, or 30, 40 in the kitchen we had, only 4 of us were eligible for JobKeeper.
Wow.
Because either, for example, the head chef, his name's Chris, he's Scottish. He's been living here for nearly 6 years in a relatively senior position the whole time, and he's not eligible. And then, all the sous chefs are all visa workers, all been here for years, and they're not eligible. And then, so yeah, it's pretty messed up that we have that many people, 40 on the team, and only 4 of us can get JobKeeper, me included. So yeah, it's hard, and obviously restaurants, the margins are so small that you can't be paying people salaries with no revenue coming in for a long period of time. And I think it's a good time to really look at how restaurants are operated and run, and the business models, because there's been so much emphasis on wages and pay scandals and all these kind of things. But I think it also does highlight a good point as well. We need to make restaurants also commercially viable, so when things happen, they have some sort of support to be able to support staff and other situations. But most restaurants, I've spoken to a lot of people in the industry, especially in Melbourne, most of them have 3 weeks cash flow, 3-4 weeks cash flow, as in if there's no revenue coming in for 3-4 weeks, they don't have any money left, the bank's empty. And most other businesses, bigger companies, would run on 6 months at least cash flow, 12 months cash flow, that they could, pay staff and operate without any revenue coming in for that kind of period of time. So, but a lot of things need to change for restaurants to be, safer commercially.
What are the keys to making them commercially viable?
Educating consumer that food's too cheap. I think that's, and myself included, like we can go out for dinner. People even in the industry, you or I or any other, industry people, go out for dinner and have something and think, well, that was, get the bill, and even you had a nice night, you still have the sense of, wow, that was pretty expensive. Because you had a bottle of wine and you had some food, and you leave thinking, wow, that was, Jesus, I spent, $150 there, and I thought I just had like some pasta and wine. And so we're very, very, very money value orientated in Australia, which you don't really have the same kind of vibe in Europe. I lived in Copenhagen, and restaurants there and things are much more expensive. And a coffee's $8. You go get a latte at a cafe, it's $8. If you go out for dinner, if you have a degustation menu at a restaurant and a wine match, you're spending $800 to $1,000 per person. If a restaurant charged that kind of money here, it'd be empty, because we have such a what is value, what should things cost. And right now, restaurants aren't really allowed to charge that much, and people wouldn't come if they did charge that much. But with staff being paid what they're paid, which is a good thing, but also the margins are getting tighter and tighter, and staff are getting more and more expensive, food's getting more and more expensive, and restaurant prices aren't really moving because the consumer wouldn't come. So there's a few things that would need to happen for restaurants to be a better business. Firstly, the industry award, the confusing thing it is, needs to be just simplified. There can't be such black and white, confusing. Once they've done 10 hours, they go to this. Once they've done, once it's Sunday, they go to this. Once they've done this many shifts in a row, they goes to this. It's just like a jumble of thing. And it's, being a chef is not considered, or even being a front of house professional is not considered a career anymore. It's considered just like you're working in a cinema, or working in a fast food joint, or working at a little coffee shop in the corner because you're a student, part-time student. That's what it seemed like. But if it's a career, like for me or for many people, young people, being a chef is their career, and they want to go work overseas, and they want to travel, and they want to work in these amazing restaurants. They want to have a place of their own, and they want to do all these steps to do there. Just like in any field, whether it's in journalism or consulting or business or corporate or banking or photography or whatever it is, it's a career. And then you would work, you'd learn from the best, and you'd really dedicate yourself in the industry to then be a real true industry professional, and then get really good high paying jobs. But right now, it's seen as, chefs are seen as, and all front of house is seen as it's just like a shift work, casual cinema job selling popcorn. It should be seen as a career. If a young chef wants to work 40 hours, more than 40 hours, just to stay back and help and see how to fillet fish better, or right now restaurants don't have the backing, the financial capability, because the margin's so tight, to be like, yeah, no worries, you stay back, we'll pay you for 3 more hours and you can do the fish with us. It's a case of no, you go, like clock out, go, because they're just, restaurants just don't have the money, and then you people will miss out, and then it's gonna become, Australian chefs are gonna go backwards in their education and training. Yeah, sorry for the ramble there, but it's true. Like, you're seeing much more talented chefs coming out of places like Scandinavia and the States, and in Europe, just because they're really dedicated and they really work, and they're seen as it's seen as a profession right now with all these awards and how restaurants are working. The chefs are seen as a very casual cinema style job, and talent's going backwards.
Vue de Monde is the flagship of Shanna Bennett's Vue Group, and it's a super premium restaurant. How are you feeling about that part of the industry, that fine dining side of things, given the pandemic and what may follow?
I mean, it is scary. Obviously, I heard, I think it was Pat Norse was on here and saying he's never felt, or a food writer said he's never felt less essential. And I think it's the same kind of thing for a fine dining restaurant in one sense. Like, food is essential. A 12-course degustation is not essential. So, it is like, wow, if you were a chef, like, it's much more, you feel much more better and essential, I guess, if you're working in a hospital kitchen, or, a fair share, or one of these sort of community kitchens, versus an expensive fine dining restaurant. But at the same time, like, me personally, and a lot of people love going out and having a big dinner and having a big night and having a real sort of aspirational experience. You cannot have a home and just get out of your usual world for a few hours. And I think maybe that's actually more important than ever. If all you see on the news right now is virus this, case numbers, outbreak here, outbreak in the pub in Sydney, Victoria, massive outbreak. If it is an escape, if you can go into a beautiful restaurant and have amazing service and eat some of the best produce and food in the country and just be looked after and nourished for a few hours, then if you look at it that way, then I think it is and will stay around and be here for the long term. I don't think fine dining will necessarily go anywhere. I hope not anyway.
You're actually still quite a young man. I think I was already in the workforce by the time you were born, and you were executive chef of Vue de Monde in your early 20s. What was that like, being so young and in control of one of the most influential restaurants in Australia's history?
It was exciting, and it kind of just happened. And I would say, there's a lot of people that already work at Vue de Monde that obviously made the transition really easy and have been super supportive the whole time. I think if I'd got the position and then people went out after me to not welcome me with open arms, and it could have been a very different onboarding. But no, the team, especially the senior team, is super supportive and always have been in the both front of house, admin, and the kitchen. And so it was a new learning experience. But I was an apprentice at Vue de Monde when we moved up to the Rialto, actually, just around that time, and when Shannon was really involved, and we always got along, and Shannon Bennett was 24 when he opened Vue de Monde, so I guess it's not new to being a young person sort of, as a face or as a personality there, as a chef there. Shannon was always very young. He's still young. He's 45 and he's what he's accomplished. He's still a young guy, technically. But so it's always been an ambitious young place, and I think Shannon wanted someone young, and we turned 20 this year. Vue de Monde opened in 2000, so it's 20 years old now.
Wow.
Which for a restaurant to be, not to blow smoke up the restaurant's ass if it has one, but it's pretty amazing that a restaurant that's 20 years old is still so relevant and so busy and still, just is a great place to come and eat, I think, anyway. So yeah, I'm really excited, and we have big goals for the restaurant for another 20 years as well. So yeah, I think young is good sometimes, but it's definitely I've definitely got an amazing support team that make it really very easy.
Vue de Monde has always had that French aspect to it, and you've been a part of the transformation to be more contemporary. Can you tell us about the food and offering there and how it's changed?
Yeah, it's still very much on its sort of journey away from what it was when it opened in 2000. It was a little restaurant in Carlton in Drummond Street, and it was a very traditional French restaurant. Shannon had done his sort of training in London and at really classic restaurants under Marco Pierre White, and I think it was John Burton Race as well. But really, really classic sort of French style restaurants, and that was his training. That's what he opened. But when as he sort of got a little older, he's still young, but as he got a little older and wanted to keep progressing Vue de Monde, he never wanted to stay in a little terrace house in Drummond Street. He always wanted to be sort of become a bit of an institution in Melbourne, and with that he thought he needed to get away from sort of the classic French and become more focused on where he was, and that's obviously Australia and where Australia was going. So yeah, he sort of the journey started since he really opened, and then 2005 he moved to Normandy Chambers, which is in Little Collins Street, and that's that's when he started having sort of head chefs, and they would have their own sort of take and influence on the menus. And then I'd say in 2011, when they moved upstairs, that's when the vision changed more dramatically, to really focus on Australia and modern Australia, and that's why the tables are all covered in kangaroo leather, because he's really big on sustainability. So there's no tablecloths, there's no washing, there's not a huge amount of water wasted. All the artwork's Australian, and it's really sort of that modern and sexy, and it's a beautiful place. And the chef at the time was named Corey Campbell, and Corey was he was one of the original sous chefs at Noma when it opened, and one of the really, really early guys before Noma was Noma. And I think Corey was really changed sort of the style and really sort of went from French to a modern Australian restaurant. I'd say he was still the big influence there. Yeah, and then we're still on that journey.
Well, you're still quite young, but do you remember when you first stepped into a restaurant kitchen and how you felt to begin your career?
Yeah, I was shocking. I was at Rockpool, actually. I did my work experience at Rockpool in Melbourne, and as a high school student, I did my work experience, and I actually remember thinking at the end of the shift, like, fuck this. I'm not doing this. It's a shocking job. It's, I don't want to be fucking told what to do. I was, 14, obnoxious teenager. Did front of house and back of house, for my work experience, and just like, I just felt the kitchen was like sort of nasty and just a bit cowboy, and not cowboys in like a sense of using a chef term, as in like you're not doing anything the right way, just a bit loose than you'd see in a school or a normal business. But I was kind of like, I'm not sure about this. Maybe I changed my mind, and I was set on being a chef when I was young. I loved food and cooking, and just like watching like anything, like whether it's Jamie Oliver on TV. I just loved watching cooking things, and so I wanted to do it. But after my work experience, I was kind of like, I don't know if I want to do that. But one of the sous chefs there was a guy called Nick, and he really took me under his wing. We actually went to the same high school. He was there, years before me, but we worked out, went to the same high school, and he kind of really looked after me. And then after my work experience, offered me an apprenticeship. And then, I was kind of like, oh, well, I guess I should do that. Spoke to my parents, and they were really supportive. So that was it. Started my apprenticeship at Rockpool a few months after that. And I was, just 15, 16.
And you spent a bit of time over in Denmark as well at Noma. How did that transform you as a chef?
It was amazing. I went to, so after I finished my apprenticeship, I was at Vue de Monde for a bit, but then, I was always wanted to live overseas, and I guess still, and then especially, was Scandinavia was the place to be, and Noma was sort of the restaurant to go to. So I really wanted to go there, and I just sort of set my head to work in there. So I basically just got my visa, working holiday visa, and a plane ticket, went over, and I emailed asking if I could just like stage or trial or whatever, just hang out, work for free for however long. I said I'm looking for a job, but I understand I'm sure there's a big queue and blah, blah, blah. And I just got an email back saying like, hey, yes, we have no positions, but if you're in town, you want to trial or hang out, you can come down. So I basically just rocked up and did, I think, 3 weeks there, and this is before Noma Australia. And anyway, I loved it, and it was intense. It was another level. Like, there's like 40 chefs on a shift, 25 interns upstairs. Renee was there every day, really hands on, just intense, like fucking intense, like just music blasting. I just remember the music before at Vue de Monde, we weren't ever allowed music playing. that's all changed now, but like it was a very sort of more traditional sense, and so maybe strict for the sake of being strict. But anyway, Noma would blast like heavy metal music or like just like hip, like really hardcore sort of hip hop, and it was just blast. And I just remember thinking like, how the fuck do you guys concentrate? And anyway, you got kind of used to it, but it was just amazing. And they're going to Noma Australia, and so Ben, who's the head chef there, really really lovely guy. He's Canadian, just really calm and focused, and just really really great leader. But his girlfriend, not then, but to be, was Australian, so he's just got on well, and he loved Australia. He worked at Bray, in Victoria, and so yeah, we got on well. I was just saying, well, if you know you guys are in Australia, I'd love to come as well, and I guess hang out and work for free or whatever it is, as you do. And he was like, yeah, you know, obviously Australia has really strict labour laws, and you know you can't just be there for work experience. Like there's all these rules and blah blah blah. And you know, as we do, we make everything really difficult. But I was like, well, what if I'm trialing? Like, what if we can say it's a trial? He's like, okay, we'll do that. We'll say it's a trial. So basically, if anyone comes and asks from, you know, the work ombudsman or whatever, just say you're trialing for a job. So anyway, sure enough, I was there a few months later, just staging, interning, and an ombudsman came and was asking people for their, you know, work rights and all this stuff, and the students, the interns, of what they were doing and where their degree was or whatever it was. Anyway, someone came up to me, and I think I just bullshitted. I said like, oh, I'm a sous chef here, and I'm Australian, so I don't need a work right. And a few of the chefs heard me and thought it was kind of funny that I went straight for a joke of a senior position. And yeah, and then I just got on well with them, and then there was a position opened up, basically right after Noma Australia, and I was sort of at the right place at the right time, and got the job, and yeah, and that was it. It was amazing. And then from there we did Noma, Copenhagen, Mexico, and then opened the new Noma, and I came home sort of October 2018. So yeah, it was I think it's sort of the perfect time to be there, really, like between, you know, the pop-ups, old Noma and new Noma. So I'm really really grateful to have been there for that time, and it was just, yeah, it was amazing.
So what's the plan at the moment? You did a takeaway model in the last lockdown, and you've locked down for at least 6 weeks at the moment. What's the plans with the group?
Well, we need to do something, because like before with the 4 people on JobKeeper out of, you know, a team of 40, 50 guys. So, you know, we need to do something to try to get as many people working in some form as possible. So we'll probably look at doing a take-home thing again, maybe slightly differently. Before we were doing, you know, you could just order one meal, like one truffle risotto or something, and that was it. But it's probably too much work for the price, because it's pretty cheap. So we'll probably look at sort of more sort of at home meals, packages. We're talking with a collaboration with an orchestra to do like a live streaming sort of concert dinner.
Wow.
And a few ideas like that. So there's a few things we're working on now, but we need to do something for the next sort of 5 weeks, and we'll do hopefully something really cool, and yeah, get as many people working again. But we are just, you know, we just want to reopen again, obviously, but you know, it could be more than 6 weeks, so we have to do something.
How have you felt during this time, and has it affected your food that you want to do in the restaurant when it does open up again?
Yeah, well, it does, because more than ever we're more cost sensitive, price sensitive. Within it, you know, there's sort of no real room for flexibility when there maybe was before a little bit. If you want to do a certain dish with certain ingredients, you could sort of make it happen by, you know, jigging things around, but there's not really any flexibility anymore. I think with the first lockdown, you know, we'd just come out of trade and it was okay, but now gone back into this for another 6 weeks with no revenue. It's, you know, we're going to open up and be really, really, you know, strict and not tight. Like we're still use all the things we want to use, but just really, really, really strict with usage. And it'll be a case of, only the sous chefs can break down the Wagyu, only things like that, where it's not great for the team. It's great if, you can get an apprentice and break down the animals with them or things like that. But when financially the situation is what it is in the world, you have no room for error, no room for waste. So yeah, it's, things will change slightly with how we operate and run. But in terms of the food and the menu, we'll still do what we want to do, and still give the guest the experience we want to give the guest, just in a COVID world.
How does it feel in Melbourne at the moment compared to the first time you were locked down?
I think people, like, I went around the Botanics yesterday actually, and there's a lot of people out, and I think people were kind of almost resistant. Like, no one's doing the wrong thing, as in like having house parties, or not that I know of anything like that, because police are out in force, and you do see them out in force. There's police horses, riding around, police cars everywhere. But people are out, people are exercising, and people walking for going for a walk, because that's exercise for hours, and getting takeaway coffees and that kind of thing. Like, people really sort of resisting it. That's sort of what I see anyway. So yeah, like, it is, and it's cold. It's Melbourne. It's Melbourne, so it's been rainy and cold, but so it's definitely, no one wants it this time. Like, it's not, obviously, and no one wants any lockdown, but you can definitely feel it. Like, fuck this. Like, definitely.
What have you been doing over the last couple of months? Has this experience changed you?
Me as a person, no, I don't think so. I'm still really energetic and excited, and there's things I really want to achieve and do with the restaurant and with the team and with lots of different things, and I still have that. That hasn't changed. Personally, what I've been doing, I've trying to been healthier, exercising more. I feel, exercise has come sort of more of a daily routine. I almost feel like, when you haven't showered and you kind of feel, not that I'm saying you don't shower, but if you haven't had a shower in a while, you kind of feel a little gross, and you kind of feel like you can't start your day, or like sometimes you just get in the shower because you're like, I feel rank, I need a shower. It's, exercise has sort of come a bit like that. Like, when you haven't done any exercise or anything, whether it's a walk or anything basic, you kind of feel like a bit of a slob and kind of gross, like you haven't showered. So exercise, I'm trying to do, and just even if it's like a run, or do a little funny little YouTube workout, like no weights YouTube workout or something, nothing crazy, just exercising. What else? Been reading a lot. Just cookbooks. I love cookbooks. Photography. I really like photography. I'm not a photographer by any means, but I really like taking photos, especially of food and ingredients. I spend a lot of time just taking photos of different ingredients at work. Probably too much time. Yeah, I want to get my driver's license done. I've never driven a car, so that's my goal for the end of the year. And it's becoming a real big problem when I'm getting like one of my commies to drive up to the farm or something. I need an apprentice to drive me. So getting my driver's license is a goal for the year. So yeah, these kind of things, I guess, which I usually never have time for. Yeah.
There's no doubt that there's some challenges ahead. What do you think the impact will be of this second lockdown on the industry, and are there some positives and opportunities moving forward out of this?
To be positives out of this, I don't know. I really don't. I feel like some people, some businesses have found opportunities, like, whether it's a take-home food models or an online store or something that, they'll keep post-pandemic, and it's going to be, really good for them. For us, what we do is, what I love doing is having guests in the restaurant, in a busy, full restaurant, serving, great food and great wine. So, limitations in any form is not positive for us. But I'm sure there are some positives for people. Yeah.
What do you love about what you do?
We love cooking for people. I love having guests in. Having a night when the best night, an ideal night, is when you have guests in, and you can tell they're really, really just having a good time. And it's not really about the food or the wine or whatever. It's just the buzz in the room, and you really know it. It's like, I'm sure it's the same for a musician when they're doing a concert and the crowd's just great. It makes the concert better. And if the crowd's good in a restaurant, if the vibe's good in the room, the vibe's good everywhere. The vibe's good in, like we always say, mood's contagious. Like if someone rocks up in a bad mood at work, it can be me, it can be anyone. It's a very contagious thing, a mood, whether it's a staff member or a guest or whatever. So if the manager's in a bad mood, I'm sure everyone's been in this scenario, and your managers or your boss or your head chef or whatever's in a bad mood. It's sort of contagious thing that flows to the kitchen porter or to the polishers. Bad mood spread. So if a guest is in a great mood and we're in a great mood and just the whole place is in a great mood and it's buzzing, that's what I love. They're the best nights. And just, yeah, that's it.
Well, if all things go to plan, you'll be opening up again in spring. What can we expect on a spring menu at Vue de Monde?
We'll see. We'll get cracking. I guess we have to make a new menu. Lots of, that's when shoots are young and fresh and beautiful. So I think really light, really plant focused. And just light and plant focused and fresh, bright. We've been thinking about a lamb feast for a while, just like a full lamb, whole lamb, all the different parts in sort of a feasty form. Maybe we'll crack that out. But that's something we'll start working on.
That sounds good.
But yeah.
Well, Hugh, good luck. I know it's pretty tough times down there, but you're a pretty amazing young man. And you are incredibly young still, but have achieved so much already in your life. Good luck with this lockdown and stay strong. And thanks for speaking to us.
Thanks so much. Go have a beer in a pub for the Victorians that can't. So enjoy, guys.
This is the Deep in the Weeds podcast. I'm Anthony Huckstep. Stay tuned as we share the stories of Australia's hospo community, suppliers and producers in search of hope during this pandemic. Special thanks to executive producer Rob Locke for making this all happen. Follow us on Instagram at Deep in the Weeds Podcast or email us at podcast@deepintheweeds.com.au. Stay safe and be well.